Hey everybody, welcome to Underground Comic Review. My name's Sean and today I'll be reviewing Comix Book number 4, Youth's Companion. Comix Book number 4 was published by Kitchen Sink Enterprises with the front cover by Leslie Carbaga. For those of you who don't know, Comix Book was originally published by Marvel Comics. I don't know if you've ever heard of that company, but they had a couple popular movies come out recently, so it might be worth checking out. Either way, it was their first foray into the underground comic scene and they gave it an honest go. They had no ads, no restrictions on the artist, and the artists themselves didn't have to move to New York, which was pretty great. But despite that, due to low sales, they were canned after only 3 issues. But that editor and the artist, still having 2 issues remaining and set to go, decided to print them themselves. And this is the first of 2. On the first page, there is an editorial done by Dennis Kitchen essentially explaining what I just told you. After that, there's an ad for the Krupp mail order catalog, which I would love to get my hands on someday. It says that they have for sale, along with comics, they carry head shop items, t-shirt iron-ons, and belt buckles. It's too bad they're not still available. I'd be all over those products. We have a nice and simple contents page next, and on the flip side is letters to the artist page, which has both praise and hate for former issues. I think it's kind of funny that someone took the time to write and mail a letter saying that you don't like the comic that they spent a whole $1 on, but I suppose stamps are cheaper then. And for the first comic, we have a familiar face to my viewers, John Pound's character Flip T. Bird. In People Going Psychotic, consult Dr. Flip T. Bird. In the story, a suicidal man goes to a psychiatrist's office for help with his problem, but too bad for him, that doctor is just Flip pretending to get some easy rent money. The man goes in and tells him all about his troubles, about his brain tumor, his cheating wife, who just so happens to be cured of her frigidity by Dr. Flip, and his runaway daughter, who he suspects might be with some sex pervert. So Flip decides to give him some LSD and put on a horror sound effect record for him to sit and relax to, so Flip can get back to the girl who's been hiding in the closet the whole time. After a bit, the man starts to freak out and he tries to leave, but he opens the wrong door only to find Flip and his daughter making love in the closet. The man then, mad with anger, jumps out of a window to what you can presume is an untimely demise. Though it appears to be good for Flip's business because according to him, kooks like that guy always scare away all the good patients. The next comic is by Skip Williamson and concerns a duck who's sick of being treated with no respect due to being a cute comic book character. The other characters of the story get tired of his bitching, so they give him a gun, and the other character says, "You can use the next room if you wish to avoid public spectacle." This comic runs pretty quickly and is a little bit less funny every time you read it. After that is the first one-pager called The Beau Bland Show starring W.C. Fields by Joe Beck. In the comic, W.C. Fields gives us a recipe for cooking babies. It's actually pretty funny and surprisingly feels like a little more than just shock humor. Up next is Panthea by Trina. It's about a half-lion, half-human named Panthea. In the story, Panthea is kidnapped by a militant all-women's animal rights group that is trying to save her from mankind and the endangered species. A ridiculous idea for a band that apparently crucifies monkeys on stage. The story itself isn't too great, but I haven't read the other parts, so I can't speak on it as a whole. The next comic is the long-titled A Day in the Life in Sensaground, A Day in the Life, Jack Hammer. Realism topped only by The Apocalypse Itself, by Stanley Richwitz and S.F. Jade. In it, 2 friends go to see a movie and they think that the special effects are fantastic, but it turns out they are in an actual earthquake. It's okay, but definitely nothing to write home about. After that piece, we have Leslie Carbaga's Buddy Baker's Crooner for Hire, which is the story of 30s crooner Buddy Baker and his rise to fame from small-time malt shop employee to talk of the town. At the end, there's an article explaining how Buddy maintains his beauty that goes into quite a bit of detail. I find this comic has a lot of personality and has a very pleasing look to the art. Also, the way it leaves off makes me want to see what happens next. On the opposite page, we have Two Fools by Willie Murray and Ted Richards. This is a wordless comic about 2 shipwreck victims who find a treasure chest containing liquor and clothing and a mannequin. The men develop feelings for the mannequin and fight over her, and one actually tries to choke it to death in a fit of rage. It's a pretty good comic, and despite being wordless, has a solid narrative. Next is an excellent, well-detailed profile by Dave Schreiner on Skip Williamson, one of the most celebrated underground artists out there. Then we have Sharon Rudolph's Two-Timer, or How I Got Purged from My Woman's Group, telling an amusing story where 2 of her friends from her woman's group were both dating her roommate Ted at the same time. Apparently they would be talking to each other about how great their boyfriends are, all the while not knowing they're talking about the same person. Finally unable to keep her face straight, she calls them out on it, and at first they're all apologetic and concerned, but the next time they meet up, they were on the defensive and they said she was being too aggressive and ambitious, and proceeded to kick her out of the group. The story is quite entertaining and comes off as a friend telling you a personal story. Next are 5 small comics that I won't explain, but I'll give you a good visual representation. The first is by Trina called Why I Left New York. Second is by Basil Wolverton and is called Weird Creatures. After that is my favorite of the 5, Tad and Connie by Tim Boxwell. have Sex Welfare Clinic by Sharon Rudolph. At last we have Man of the World by Gary Halgreen. After that is an interesting piece called Suburban Hoovervilles by Peter Loft, which talks about the idea of 1930 Hoovervilles, or shantytowns as I've also heard them called, and what they would be like in 1970s society. And since the population of puzzles grew massively in the 30s, he thinks coloring books will have the same gain. So he made his vision of a 70s Hooverville a coloring page and called it Buttsford. I particularly like the sign that says, "Today Twinkies and Tang Free." Up next is an absolutely fantastic story by Kim Dietch called Born Again. It's about a death row inmate named Silk Miller who believes he will be reincarnated after his death and have incredible fame. He believes this because his former cell neighbor was an occult worshipper who gave him a convincing story, and was able to get out of death row himself. I don't want to ruin the end because it's a twist, but let's just say Silk finds his fame in a very strange way. After that we have a story by Gary Halgren called Tom Turkey and the Candy-Colored Tangerine Flake Streamlined Baby. In the story, Tom Turkey sees a couple of cute girls talking about how much they like a guy's car. So he decides to buy a used one so he can pick up chicks. Once there, he ends up getting ripped off, and it turns out that the girls aren't into gas guzzlers at all and are into the more environmentally friendly type. The comic's okay, but nothing special. Next comic up is called All Things Green and Growing, story by Mal Harwick and art by Lee Mars, which is a really good horror piece about an aging botanist who took in 2 teenage orphans to help him with his man-eating plant. But his plant ends up eating the old man along with one of the orphans. The remaining orphan, being scared from her youth, feels bad for the plant and the fact that the old man wasn't giving it all the food that it desired. So she devotes herself to helping the plant feed. Now we have a piece by one of my favorite writers, Harvey Pekar, with the art done by Robert Armstrong. The title is Famous Street Fights, A True Life Adventure, A Champ, A Tale from the 50s. Like most of Harvey Pekar's stories, this is a true story of a couple of Cleveland high school toughs. One is named Francis and apparently takes no shit. So it's a regular day and they go to the drugstore after school. And this fat soda jerk gives them some shit. And since Francis don't take no shit, he chooses to fight him the next day after he's done work. The story is simple, but Harvey puts so much personality into his stories, I feel like I went to school with these characters. It's a great story and I could read it over and over again. Also, there's a couple of awesome random fact blurbs, which you'll find throughout a lot of his work. After that we have Dolly Gets a Faith Lift by Howard Cruz. It's about Dolly who finds a former faith healer who is now her homeless pigeon feeder. He explains that it was all a lie, but she ends up convincing him that he should try to heal a pigeon with the clap. He gives it a try and it works. She then asks him to fix her sexual frustration, but it turns out that the pigeon miracle was his last. The story is okay, but goes on for too long. Up next is We Fellow Travelers by Justin Green. This is chapter 4 to 5 and unfortunately I have no idea what's going on. You have another one-pager called Ezekiel Wolf by Ted Richards, which is about anthropomorphic animals playing baseball. It's pretty good, but there isn't enough material to judge it by. And on the back cover we have a comic by Steve Stiles called Let's Be Happy. In the story, Mr. Smile accidentally kills his companion's Bunky's sister and is a little bit embarrassed because he can't stop smiling. It's a great one-pager with a good punchline at the end. Well, that does it for Comics Books number 4. Overall, I say it's a great comic, but that's solely on the Harvey Pekar story and because I'm such a fan. If you're not, then I would say it's just okay, and if it's too expensive, to pass it up. Well, that does it for another episode. I hope you guys enjoyed what you saw. Please like if you like what you saw. Please comment if you'd like to get a conversation going. I always like talking about underground comics, and I'd love to talk about it with you guys. Also, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, please subscribe to my channel. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and have a good one.